Sometimes seeing the truth is a gift, and sometimes it's absolutely terrifying. Harry finally learns why he can see mysterious creatures pulling the Hogwarts carriages. He shares his first kiss with Cho Chang. He watches the members of Dumbledore's army becoming stronger, and for a brief moment it seems like Harry may finally be finding some happiness in one of the hardest years of his life. Then he falls asleep and wakes up inside the body of a snake, attacking Arthur Weasley. Welcome back to Magic Muggle, a Harry Potter after show. This is Eric Cicada, your host, aka Mr. Honest, your resident Ravenclaw, broadcasting to you from the highest tower in Hogwarts. Today we're continuing Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix with Chapter 21, The Eye of the Snake, and Chapter 22, St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Melodies and Injuries. I don't know if it's melodies or melodies. These chapters begin with Harry seeing something that most of his classmates cannot see, and they end with him seeing something nobody was ever supposed to witness. So let's get into Chapter 21, The Eye of the Snake. We began on Sunday morning with Hermione trudging through 2 feet of snow to try once again and save Hagrid from himself. Harry and Ron would have joined her, but their homework has reached dangerous levels. So they remain inside while the rest of Hogwarts is having the greatest snow day imaginable. I hate being left out. I understand that feeling. Students are skating on the frozen lake. They're riding sleds. Fred and George are enchanting snowballs to fly all the way up to Gryffindor Tower and attack the windows. That is the most Fred and George thing in the world. Ron finally sticks his head outside and threatens to use his prefect authority. He is immediately hit directly in the face with a snowball. There are certain positions of authority that Fred and George respect. Ron, being a prefect, is not really one of them. Hermione eventually returns from Hagrid's cabin, soaking wet and completely discouraged. Hagrid was not even there when she arrived. He eventually emerged from the Forbidden Forest and refused to tell her what he had been doing. He promises only that his next lesson will be a big surprise. That is probably the most frightening word Hagrid can use when discussing lesson plans. Hermione begs him to follow Professor Grubbly-Plank's curriculum and just teach something safe, sensible, and preferably incapable of removing a student's head. Hagrid does not listen. He genuinely believes nobody in their right mind would rather study gnarls than chimeras. Hermione quickly clarifies that she does not believe that Hagrid actually has a chimera. Not because he wouldn't want one, apparently the eggs are simply difficult to acquire. When Hagrid returns to the staff table the following morning, the reaction from the students is mixed. Fred, George, and Lee Jordan race over to welcome him back, while students like Parvati and Lavender look disappointed that Professor Grubbly-Plank is gone. And Harry has to admit they kind of have a point. Hagrid is a wonderful person. He knows more about magical creatures than almost anybody, but his definition of an interesting lesson normally includes at least a small possibility of dismemberment. When the class arrives on Tuesday, Hagrid is standing at the edge of the Forbidden Forest, carrying half a dead cow over his shoulder. Excellent. Nothing concerning about this whatsoever. His injuries also look worse than before. The bruises have changed color. Some of the cuts are still bleeding. Harry begins wondering whether Hagrid was attacked by something with venom that prevents wounds from healing or something like that. Hagrid leads the entire class deep into the forest, explaining that the creatures they are studying prefer darkness. Even Malfoy sounds nervous. And honestly, I appreciate that little reminder. Draco Malfoy enjoys acting fearless when he is surrounded by Crabbe and Goyle and half the Slytherin house, but the Forbidden Forest still scares him just as much as it did during their first year. A nice little memory there. After walking for several minutes, Hagrid drops the dead cow onto the ground and releases this horrifying shriek into the trees. The students wait. Then Harry sees a pair of white eyes emerging from the darkness. A black winged horse steps between the trees. It has a dragon-like face, a skeletal body, and leathery wings folded against its sides. It approaches the cow and begins tearing into the meat. And Harry feels relieved. This is such an interesting reaction. These creatures have been disturbing him ever since the school started, when he saw them. Nobody else seemed to be able to see them. Even Luna's explanation did not completely reassure him. But now Hagrid sees them too. Harry finally has proof that they are real and that something is not simply going wrong with his mind. Ron, meanwhile, is still staring into the trees and wondering why Hagrid has not called out anything yet. Most of the class cannot see the horses at all. They only see pieces of the cow disappearing as something invisible tears away at the meat. Harry notices that Neville can also see them. A Slytherin student can see them too. Hagrid finally gives them a name, thestrals. According to superstition, thestrals are supposed to bring horrible misfortune to anyone who sees them. Hagrid immediately dismisses that. They are intelligent, useful creatures with an incredible sense of direction. They are also the creatures that pull the Hogwarts carriages. That answers a mystery Harry has been carrying since the first day of school. Hagrid then asks why only certain people can see them, and Hermione explains that thestrals can only be seen by someone who has witnessed death. This is one of those magical ideas that feels much bigger than simply adding another creature into the wizarding world. Death changes what Harry is capable of seeing. The thestrals were always there. They were pulling the carriages whether Harry could see them or not. Cedric's death did not create them. It changed Harry. He now sees something that was previously invisible to him because he understands something that he did not understand before. Neville can see them because he witnessed his grandfather's death. And just as Hagrid's lesson becomes genuinely thoughtful and meaningful, Dolores Umbridge arrives. This is more an appropriate bit for the office, but the disrespect that is shown towards Hagrid by Umbridge is just uncalled for, and she treats him like an idiot. Umbridge begins inspecting Hagrid in the most insulting way possible. She speaks to him very slowly and loudly as though he cannot understand English. When Hagrid tries to explain what thestrals are, she pretends she cannot hear him. He gestures with his arms to demonstrate wings, and she writes that he has been forced to use crude sign language. When he momentarily loses his place, she records that he has poor short-term memory. That is not an inspection. Umbridge decided what Hagrid was before she ever even entered the forest. Now she's twisting everything he does to support the conclusion that she already wants. She has done this with Harry, and she has done this with Dumbledore. Now she's doing it with Hagrid because he is a half-giant. She's not measuring his ability to teach. She's looking for permission to remove someone she already considers inferior. And that's what makes this especially infuriating. It's that Hagrid's lesson is actually good. The creatures are controlled. The students are learning advanced material. Hagrid answers their questions. Hermione even admits afterward that Professor Grubbly-Plank probably would not introduce thestrals until the NEWT level. For Hagrid, this lesson is practically a TED Talk. Umbridge does not care. She asks Pansy Parkinson whether Hagrid is understandable, knowing exactly what kind of answer she will receive. Pansy said he mostly sounds like he is just grunting. Malfoy joins in. The Slytherins laugh. Hagrid's face flushes, but he continues to try to teach. Umbridge then approaches Neville and asks whom he saw die. Neville tells her it was his grandfather. There is no sympathy in her response. She immediately asks whether he is frightened of the thestrals, and when Neville says he is not, she writes that students are too intimidated to admit when they're afraid. There is no correct answer because Umbridge is not gathering information. She's manufacturing evidence. Hermione is practically shaking with anger by the time Umbridge leaves, and I'm right there with her. I mean, I love Hagrid. He's one of my favorite characters, and he's always got the best intentions, and he's doing his very best. And that's what matters. Yes, Hagrid has weaknesses as a teacher. We've seen them. Hermione spent half the previous chapter desperately trying to prevent him from bringing something dangerous into class. But Umbridge is not criticizing those real weaknesses. She's attacking his intelligence, his speech, his heritage. She's reducing him to every cruel stereotype the Ministry already believes about giants. The chapter moves into December, and the fifth years are drowning in homework. Ron and Hermione are also overwhelmed by prefect responsibilities, including decorating the castle while Peeves tries to strangle Ron with tinsel. Christmas cheer at Hogwarts is always slightly violent. Harry does not want to spend the holiday at Hogwarts this year. He's been banned from Quidditch. He's worried about Hagrid, and almost everyone in the DA will be leaving. Then, Ron casually mentions that Harry is coming to the Burrow. Apparently, Mrs. Weasley invited him weeks ago, and Ron simply forgot to mention it. Harry's entire mood changes. Christmas at the Burrow, it honestly sounds perfect, although he immediately feels guilty about Sirius being left alone at Grimmauld Place. That is one of the saddest parts of Sirius' situation. Harry finally finds a godfather who wants to be a part of his life, but every attempt they make to be a family is restricted by Sirius' confinement. For the DA meeting before Christmas, Harry enters the room of requirement and discovers that Dobby has decorated it. There are 100 golden ornaments hanging from the ceiling, each containing Harry's face and wishing everyone a very Harry Christmas. Dobby understood the assignment. He may have understood it too much. Luna arrives first and points out the mistletoe above Harry's head, warning him that he may be infested with Nargles. We still do not know what Nargles are, but apparently Harry should be grateful for them. Before the meeting, Angelina tells Harry that Gryffindor has replaced him, Fred, and George. Ginny is the new Seeker. I love that Ginny has apparently been developing into this extremely capable Quidditch player in the background. She's not as good as Harry, but Angelina admits that she is talented. The replacement beaters, Andrew Kirk and Jack Sloper, Angelina is significantly less enthusiastic about them. The DA spends the meeting reviewing everything that they have learned. Neville has improved so much that Harry allows him to start practicing with Ron and Hermione. I mean, that is enormous progress. Neville began these meetings struggling with almost every spell, but Harry's patience and Neville's determination are changing him. Even when Neville accidentally stuns Padma instead of Dean, Harry recognizes that it was at least much closer of a miss than usual. And that is growth. Harry walks around the room watching everyone practice, and he feels proud. Not because they admire him, but because they are becoming capable of protecting themselves. This may be the most natural Harry has ever felt in a position of leadership. He does not enjoy authority for its own sake. He enjoys seeing other people become stronger because of something he taught them. He tells everyone that after Christmas, they may be ready to begin working on Patronuses. That should be interesting. The meeting ends. Everyone slowly leaves. Everyone except Cho. Harry pretends to reorganize the cushions while Cho asks Marietta to let her go ahead without her. And Harry's heart nearly exits his body. He waits for Cho to speak. Then he turns around and sees her crying. Cho explains that learning defensive magic keeps making her think about Cedric. She wonders whether Cedric might still be alive if he had known more. Harry tells her that Cedric did know this magic. He was talented enough to reach the center of the Triwizard Maze. But if Voldemort truly wants to kill someone, Harry says, they do not have much of a chance. That may not be the most comforting answer, but it's the honest one. Cho reminds Harry that he survived Voldemort as a baby. Harry says nobody knows why that happened, including him, so it's not something he feels proud of. And it's not like we're against Harry, but there's clearly something bigger going on with his defense against Voldemort. There's like a weakness built inside of him, a trigger that pretty much holds off Voldemort from being able to harm him, or at least gives Harry a much better chance of surviving encounters with him. And I'm sure we'll learn even more about this. Right now we know it's the gift of love. His mom was protecting him, and it's old magic. You know, we hear Voldemort refer to it that way previously in the series. This is such an emotionally complicated scene because Cho does genuinely like Harry, but Cedric is present in every part of their relationship. Cho is grieving someone she cared about while developing feelings for the person who was beside Cedric when he died. Harry likes Cho, but talking about Cedric forces him to relive the most traumatic moment of his life. Neither of them is doing anything wrong. They are two simple teenagers carrying more grief than either of them knows how to express. We can't forget they're just kids. Even for I'm an adult reading this novel, complex situations for kids for sure. Cho tells Harry that he is a good teacher. She then notices the mistletoe. Harry warns that it may contain Nargles, which somehow is the best romantic line his brain can produce. Cho moves closer. She tells him that she really likes him, and Harry Potter has his first kiss. Half an hour later, Harry returns to the Gryffindor common room in a complete state of shock. Hermione immediately knows that Cho stayed behind after the meeting. Ron tries pretending he is not interested for approximately 3 seconds. Hermione asks whether they kissed, and Ron sits up so quickly that he knocks his ink across the floor. Harry confirms it. Ron celebrates like Gryffindor just won another Quidditch Cup and asks how it was. Harry thinks about it, and he says wet, because Cho was crying. Ron asks whether Harry is simply terrible at kissing, which had not occurred to Harry, and immediately gives him something new to worry about. Hermione then attempts to explain everything Cho is feeling. She's grieving Cedric. She feels guilty for liking Harry. She may believe that kissing Harry is somehow betraying Cedric's memory. She's worried about what other people will think. Harry's presence reminds her of Cedric's death. She may not completely understand her own feelings yet. Ron declares that nobody could possibly feel that many things at once because they would explode. Hermione informs him that having the emotional range of a teaspoon is not universal. One of Hermione's finest moments. Harry admits that his response to Cho crying was to pat her awkwardly on the back. Hermione looks like she is using every ounce of self-control not to roll her eyes, but Harry is confused too. He has imagined being with Cho for a long time. In those fantasies, however, Cho was normally happy. Now that something has actually happened between them, Harry realizes that real relationships are much more complicated than the version he created in his head. Ron then notices that Hermione is writing an extremely long letter to Victor Crumb. His jealousy returns immediately. Ron cannot simply understand what Hermione sees in an older, internationally famous Quidditch player, apart from those two tiny details, obviously. Harry goes to sleep thinking about Cho and wondering whether he should have asked her out. His dreams begin with Cho, Cedric, chocolate frog cards, Hermione, Dobby, ornaments, and Harry's confiscated firebolt. Then everything changes. Harry feels his body become smooth and powerful. He's moving across cold stone on his stomach, and he can see the world in a strange color. He tastes the air with his tongue. He sees a man sleeping in the front door. Harry wants to bite him, but he tries to resist because there is something more important that he is supposed to do. Then, when the man awakes, Harry strikes once, twice, 3 times. His fangs sink into the man's body. He feels ribs breaking. He feels blood pouring into his mouth. And then Harry wakes in his bed, covered in sweat, his scar burning, and his body tangled in the blankets. He vomits over the side of the mattress, which I probably would too if something that real overcame me. Whether it was true or not, that is a traumatic nightmare. Ron is standing over him. Neville, Dean, and Seamus are watching from the end of the bed. Harry desperately tells Ron that his father has been attacked. Ron assumes Harry was dreaming, but Harry knows this was different. And then Harry says something horrifying. I did it. He did not merely watch Arthur Weasley be attacked. He experienced the attack from the inside of the snake. Professor McGonagall arrives wearing her tartan dressing gown with her glasses sitting crookedly on her face. Harry tries explaining everything. He's terrified that she will dismiss him as sick or unstable. Instead, McGonagall tells him that she actually believes him. They're going directly to Dumbledore. This brings us into Chapter 22, St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Injuries. McGonagall brings Harry and Ron to Dumbledore's office in the middle of the night. Harry explains that Arthur has been attacked by a snake, but Dumbledore does not look directly at him, as he really hasn't much of this book. Instead, he asks Harry a very specific question. From what position did Harry witness the attack? Was he standing beside Arthur? Was he watching from above? Well, Harry tells him the truth. He was the snake. And Dumbledore does not appear surprised. This is immediately concerning. Dumbledore begins activating a network Harry did not even realize existed. 2 former Hogwarts headmasters, Everard and Dilys, have portrayed hangings in their other important wizarding locations. Dumbledore sends Everard to raise the alarm at the Ministry and Dilys to watch for Arthur arriving at St. Mungo's. This is such a clever piece of magical communication. The portraits are not simply decorations honoring former headmasters, they're an intelligence network. Dumbledore sends Fawkes to deliver a warning and begins examining one of the mysterious silver instruments in his office. Green smoke emerges from it and it forms the shape of a snake. Dumbledore asks whether something is divided in essence. The smoke snake splits into 2. I do not know exactly what that means yet personally, but Dumbledore clearly suspects that Harry is having this connection with Voldemort and is more complicated than just a scar that occasionally hurts. Everard, sorry for pronouncing this guy's name wrong, returns and confirms that Arthur has been found at the Ministry, covered in blood. Dilys then reports that he has been taken to St. Mungo's. Dumbledore tells McGonagall to wake Fred, George, and Ginny, and he sends Phineas Nicholas through his portrait to warn Sirius that the Weasleys and Harry will be arriving at Grimmauld Place. The Floo network is being watched, so Dumbledore creates a portkey from an old kettle. Then, Fawkes sends a warning. Umbridge knows the students are out of bed. Even during a medical emergency, Dumbledore has to move around her surveillance. Everyone reaches for the portkey. Just before they leave, Harry finally makes eye contact with Dumbledore. His scar explodes with pain. For one terrifying instant, Harry feels an overwhelming desire to attack Dumbledore. Not to punch him, to bite him, to sink his fangs into him. Then the port key activates. They arrive in the kitchen at Grimmauld Place where Sirius is waiting. Harry tells Fred, George, and Ginny about the attack, and he changes one important detail. He claims he watched from the side. He does not tell them that he was inside the snake. Harry begins imagining accusation in their expressions. He already feels responsible and cannot risk them believing it, too. The Weasleys immediately want to go to St. Mungo's, but Sirius refuses to let them leave. They cannot explain how they learned about the attack before Arthur's own wife was officially informed. Revealing Harry's visions could expose the Order and attract the Ministry's attention. Fred and George do not care. Their father may be dying. It's a fair point, too. The argument becomes heated, and Fred throws Sirius's confinement directly in his face. He tells Sirius that it is easy for him to talk about risking his life while he remains safely trapped in the house. That cuts Sirius deeply. It's cruel, but Fred is terrified. He thinks his dad is dying. This entire family is trapped between two realities. Arthur is their father, but he was also injured while performing secret work for the Order. They cannot respond like frightened children because doing so could compromise everything Arthur was protecting. Sirius eventually persuades them to wait. He summons Butterbeer, and they sit around the kitchen table in silence. Harry can barely hold his bottle because his hands are shaking. He understands that raising the alarm may have saved Arthur's life, but Harry still cannot escape the feeling that he was also the creature that nearly killed him. A message from Mrs. Weasley arrives through Fawkes. I love Fawkes. Arthur is still alive. Those words are technically hopeful, but they make the danger feel even more real. The family waits through the entire night. At 5:10 in the morning, Mrs. Weasley enters the kitchen and tells them Arthur is going to be all right. The relief is enormous. Sirius, it gives me a fresh air. It would be terrible if we lost Mr. Weasley, you know. Sirius immediately begins planning breakfast. George and Ginny hug their mother. Ron laughs shakily and finishes his butterbeer. Harry tries to step away from the family, but Mrs. Weasley pulls him into a hug. She tells him that Arthur might have died if Harry had not seen the attack. Harry saved his life. But Harry cannot accept her gratitude because she does not know what he experienced. He pulls Sirius aside and finally tells him everything. He was the snake. He wanted to attack Dumbledore. He feels like there's something inside him. Sirius assures Harry that he was probably still affected by the vision. He tells him that he is still in shock and needs sleep. But Sirius does not truly have an explanation either. Harry goes upstairs and deliberately prevents himself from sleeping. He's terrified that closing his eyes will place him back inside the snake. He even worries that he might wake up after attacking Ron, or something worse. This is the same fear Harry has carried throughout the book, becoming much more dangerous. He has spent months wondering whether or not people see him as unstable or dangerous. Now Harry is beginning to fear that they may be right. Later that day, Tonks and Mad Eye escort everyone across London to St. Mungo's. The hospital is hidden inside an abandoned department store called Purge and Dows Limited. The building looks permanently closed. The mannequins are damaged, the clothing is outdated, and the average London shopper has apparently decided there is no reason to look twice. Tonks speaks to a particularly ugly mannequin in the window, announces that they are visiting Arthur Weasley, and walks directly through the glass. Inside is an enormous hospital, a magical hospital filled with some of the strangest injuries we have encountered. One patient releases steam from her mouth. Another rings like a bell whenever he moves. A little girl has sprouted enormous wings and is floating around while her father holds onto her ankle. The hospital staff are called healers because Ron believes Muggle doctors are lunatics who enjoy cutting people apart. St. Mungo's is funny, unsettling, and completely believable as the Wizarding World's version of a hospital. There are separate floors for creature injuries, magical illnesses, potion poisoning, spell damage, and artifact accidents. Arthur is in the ward for serious bites. Thankfully, he is sitting up in bed reading the Daily Prophet when they arrive. He looks pale but cheerful. The healers cannot remove his bandages because the wound begins bleeding whenever they try. The snake's venom contains something that prevents the injuries from closing, so Arthur has to take blood replenishing potion every hour. Even while hospitalized, Arthur is fascinated by everyone else's medical conditions. One patient has been bitten by a werewolf. Arthur tries comforting him by describing a very nice werewolf he knows who manages the condition. The patient threatens to bite him again unless he stops talking. Arthur Weasley nearly bleeds to death and immediately begins making friends in the serious bite ward. Fred and George begin questioning where Arthur was when he was attacked. They suspect he was guarding the mysterious weapon Voldemort wants. Arthur avoids answering, and Harry already knows that Arthur was stationed in front of the same door he has seen in his reoccurring dreams. The corridor is real. The door is real. And Voldemort sent the snake there for a reason. After Mrs. Weasley sends the children into their corridor, Fred and George reveal another practical use for their inventions: extendable ears. Everyone listens through the hospital door as Moody, Tonks, and Mrs. Weasley and Arthur discuss the attacks. Moody believes Voldemort sent the snake to investigate what the Order was guarding. And then Mrs. Weasley says Dumbledore almost seemed to be waiting for Harry to see something like this. Moody admits that there has always been something unusual about Harry. Dumbledore is worried because Harry did not merely see the attack, he saw it from Voldemort's snake. And Moody begins asking the question Harry is the most afraid to hear. What if Voldemort is possessing him? Everyone else is staring at him, and for the first time, the fear Harry has been carrying is no longer only inside his own head. These chapters are about what it means to see something other people cannot. Harry sees thestrals because death changed him. He sees Arthur's attack because his connection to Voldemort allows him into places no one else can reach. In both cases, Harry's vision gives him important knowledge, but knowledge comes with a cost. Seeing the thestrals remind him that Cedric is dead. Seeing the snake saves Arthur's life, but leaves Harry questioning whether he was actually the attacker or not. The cruelest part is that Harry finally receives the thing he wanted most throughout this entire book. People believe him. McGonagall believes him immediately. Dumbledore takes action. The Order confirms that every detail Harry described was real. Harry has spent the entire year furious that nobody believes what he saw in the graveyard. Now everyone believes him, and the truth is more frightening than being doubted. Dumbledore also remains impossible to read. He clearly knows more about Harry's connection to Voldemort than he is willing to explain. He avoids looking directly at Harry. His mysterious instrument produces two snakes, and the moment they finally make eye contact, Harry feels Voldemort's hatred rise inside him. Whatever is happening, Dumbledore seems to have anticipated at least part of it. The question is, why has he left Harry completely unprepared? And now Harry has to live with the possibility that Voldemort is not merely entering his dreams. Voldemort may be using Harry as a doorway. That is where we end today. Like I said, a very entertaining couple of chapters there. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of Magic Muggle, a Harry Potter after show. If you're enjoying the journey through the Wizarding World, follow the show, leave a rating, and write a review wherever you listen. Every rating genuinely helps more people discover Magic Muggle. I need your help. Next time, we'll continue with chapters 23 and 24 and find out what happens now that Harry and the Weasley family believe Voldemort may be able to reach directly inside Harry's mind. Very exciting and also very scary. And until then, wands down, hearts full.